Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akin Thomas, and I'm the CEO of AKD Solutions. And this afternoon, I want to share with you a concept that I'm developing called disruptive learning. Just a little bit about myself. I'm the CEO of an organization called AKD Solutions, and we're an international learning and development consultancy. And we really specialize in looking at very innovative learning solutions. And I've devised this learning methodology because I've seen a gap in terms of how we learn, especially how we design the future. And so what I want to do this afternoon is really take you through this concept, this idea, okay? What I would like to do, normally I like to have a conversation, but what's going to be important is that if you have any questions, please use the chat function to ask those questions, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you and kind of respond to those questions as we go. Okay, so I'm just going to put some slides up. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. So I'm sharing my screen now. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so I'm going to start with this question. Before I even ask this question, I'm going to kind of locate us exactly where we are now. All of us have experienced the most disruptive period of our lives since around March time. We have all experienced some level of lockdown, a high level of disruption to our life, but also more importantly, I think we've all demonstrated a profound ability to actually adapt and to do things very, very differently. And I suspect some of you have found yourself being able to do things that you never thought were possible. I myself never thought I would be doing a virtual conference to Nigeria. I prefer to be in front of people, but I've had to adapt and to really move very quickly. And it showed me things that I didn't think were possible are actually more than possible. So therefore, what it means is this pandemic has really, in some ways, really confirmed my hypothesis in terms of disruption, okay? Let me start with this question. If we have no idea what the world will look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years, how do we prepare our organizations for its best future? And I think this is a really important question, because if you are a leader within an organization, you have a fundamental responsibility to design the future of your organization. And in fact, I would argue that it's not just for leadership. I would say that for a lot of organizations, this should be a whole organization thing in terms of everybody should be contributing to the future. But I do recognize that for a lot of organizations, that's very much within the domain of those who are defined as leaders within the organization. But if we look at this question in terms of we have no idea what the world's going to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years. In fact, if you look at the beginning of 2020, many of us had plans for the new decade, etc. Yeah? And we're in situations which we could never see coming. So therefore, the reality is this, is that we are unable to predict the future, but we need to think about how do we make sure that we are prepared for the future. And one of the things I think is really important is actually differentiating between planning and preparedness, because a lot of organizations plan their future. And in some ways, what it means is that planning can tend to be quite a linear process where if you do this set of steps, you get to this point here, okay? Whereas preparedness means that as an organization, you have created a capacity to handle different opportunities, different circumstances. And so therefore, we need to really think about how do we prepare, not just for the future, but for our best future. And so following on from that question is this question here, which is, okay, let's just have a look here. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm just having trouble with my slides. So I'm just gonna try that again. Okay, share that. Okay, it's not working, no problem. So the other question I have, based upon that scenario, is this. Let me just bring them up here. How do we create learning cultures and platforms that allow our organizations' best future to emerge? And I think that learning and development, I think HR are far more pivotal and important to organizations than they have ever been. I think that if you're going to create a future, what has to happen is that you have to have a certain level of mindset, behavior, skills, development within the organization to make that happen. And therefore, you know, what we have to look at is, do we have the right platforms? Do we have the right technologies? Do we have the right methodologies within our organization to allow our best futures to emerge? Now, what I want to do is, before I give you the definition and look at disruptive learning, what I want to do is I want to really quickly look at some of the flaws in how we currently learn. So what I'm not saying is that what we do is all bad and is all negative. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe that there are some flaws in terms of how we currently learn. So one of the biggest problems is this. If you look at, all of us would have experienced school, and when we went to school, one of the biggest profound things about school is this, is that you are rewarded for getting things right. And conversely, you're penalized for getting things wrong, okay? But if you were to really consider yourself as an individual, one of the things I think you will find is this, is that your greatest learning has not come from getting things right. So let me give you a couple of examples. You will have heard of a gentleman, you may not have heard of a gentleman called John Pemberton, but I can guarantee you know his product. So John Pemberton was a soldier. He fought in the civil rights war, in the American Civil War, and he sustained an injury, a saber through his shoulder. And he became addicted to medication. And what he was looking for was a medicine to relieve his pain, but to also to get him off the addiction that he had. He invented Coca-Cola, yeah? But it was a mistake, because he wasn't looking to create Coca-Cola, yeah? If all of you would have used a thing called a Post-it, but actually it was a mistake. It was a mistake in terms of how it was created. So this person was looking for a strong bonding agent, and what he came up with was a Post-it. Even the microwave was discovered by mistake. And yet, and these are just three simple examples of how mistakes have profoundly changed how we live. But what we have in terms of our education system is a system which encourages us to get things right. And actually, if you think about it, actually, that's quite dangerous, because for me, I would say to you that it's not to say that getting things right is wrong, but actually the danger is actually punishing getting things wrong. Because what we have seen is this, is that my development, and I suspect your development, has come about from the mistakes that you have made as opposed to the things you've got right, okay? The other thing that we do, I think, quite poorly is that we tend to learn backwards. What do I mean by that? We learn backwards. We tend to look back in terms of the learning experience, in terms of how we design our now and how we design our future. So maybe a mistake is made, and therefore we learn the lessons from that, but that mistake doesn't necessarily define your future. So it's not to say that we shouldn't learn from mistakes, and it doesn't mean that there is no place for learning backwards. But what I am saying is this, is that if you are learning backwards in terms of designing your future, you are in some ways limiting the opportunities for your future. And the other thing I think is really, really profound about the learning that we have, and I think what's really important to note is this, the way in which we learn in school, we bring it into the workplace. So therefore, in the workplace, you will see colleagues, you will see friends, you will see leaders, yeah, that they are insistent on getting things wrong. They're nervous about getting things wrong. They've learned those patterns of behavior from school. But those patterns of behavior will not help you to design your best future. And the other thing we do is that we stick to the boundaries of convention. Yeah. One of the most challenging things I think you have is where you have leaders who feel compelled to stick to boundaries of convention. If you think about the way in which we're taught, I suspect some of you would have experienced it when you challenge the teacher at school, you were seen as a troublemaker, you were seen as disruptive, etc. But surely the concept of learning and education is one where actually it is a constant challenge. But what we have found ourselves is in a space where we are molded, we are designed to stick to the boundaries of convention. It's safe, but safe is not going to get you your great future. So I think that these are three things which really are flaws in terms of how we currently learn and things that we need to really address when we're looking at creating our future. So what is disruptive learning? Disruptive learning this is the definition I've developed, which is a learning experience that radically challenges norms and provides the catalyst to new possibilities, opportunities, and outcomes. Let me say that again. A learning experience that radically challenges convention and norms and provides the catalyst to new possibilities, opportunities, and outcomes. Disruptive learning is not a linear process. So if you're asking that 2 + 2 gets you to 4, that is not disruptive learning. Disruptive learning is a thing where actually you have no idea what the potential outcome is going to be, but we're going to explore it anyway. So if you consider most learning and development professionals, the first thing that we start with is, what are the learning objectives? Now, when you're creating your future, what we say is, let's go and see. So therefore, we break the shackles of learning objectives and parameters and say, let's explore and see what we discover. One of the things I think is fundamental to any learning experience is that a learning experience must have these three components. Firstly, there must be creativity. Secondly, there must be exploration. And then thirdly, there must be discovery. If you don't have those three things, I would really challenge, are you really learning? Yeah? Or are you simply regurgitating or kind of taking in information? But I suspect that the level of learning in that process is actually quite limited. This is very different. Now, I warn you, I've done this on 2 occasions to audiences in Nigeria, and there has been this nervousness about this because it is so different. Yeah? But that learning should be different. Learning should be exciting. Okay? So what I want to do is to kind of give you a couple of, I want to give you some features of what disruptive learning looks like, and I want to also offer you some examples as well. Okay, so the first thing, as I said, is that disruptive learning is deeply unconventional. Okay, so when I design disruptive learning experiences for my clients, they basically know that they don't know what it's going to look like, but they do know it's going to look very, very different. So it means that you must have permission to actually go beyond convention, go beyond your normality, and actually explore very, very differently. Okay? The second one is probably one of the most profound, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. A disruptive learning experience will be deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And it's not designed to deliberately kind of make you nervous, but it is designed to make you uncomfortable, because there's something very profound in learning when you get to that place where you've gone beyond your norm into a space which you've never seen and never understood before. I had one of my colleagues is Professor Jules Goddard from the London Business School. And one time, I'll give you 2 examples of disruptive learning experiences that he's created. So the first one is that he took a group of executives from a French publicly listed company, and he took them to Mumbai. So he took a group of white professionals to India, and not only did he didn't stop at Mumbai, he actually took them into an extremely remote village. And for 1 week, they lived with this local community. And what was interesting is that it was a deeply uncomfortable experience for a number of them. They hated it, they were angry, they didn't know why they were there, and it was a very frustrating experience. But what was really interesting is that when they looked back, and the looking back was actually in the hotel room, the evening when they got back and they had the hotel room, they had that shower, they recognized the profoundness of their learning. They recognized the profoundness of being able to find their voice in a community that they had no correlation, no relationship with. They recognized their capacity to connect with people in ways that they never did. And what was interesting, it had a profound impact upon how they led their organizations back in France moving forward. And another example that he did is that he took a group of, another group of executives to California, and they landed in California, and they were set the objective, let us find the most interesting person in California. And they had a minibus, and they spent time driving around California in some of the most dangerous parts of California, but with the right people, of course, and actually having some really profound conversations with people. Now, you can appreciate people were deeply uncomfortable, but the learning experience was extremely profound. Another feature of disruptive learning is what I call carefully created chaos. So what do I mean by that? When I design an experience, one of the things I do is that I design the parameters in terms of, I will be very thoughtful in terms of the location, the people who I want involved in a space, and kind of the just general outline. But the rest, yes, I let it just emerge. So therefore, what I do is I kind of put together the parameters of the process, but I leave the content alone, because the content will emerge. It will be chaotic, it will be uncomfortable, it will be, it may not even make sense for a lot of it, but one of the things you do is that if you trust the process, it will emerge. And I think the other one, which you can see here, is that we don't know the outcome, but let's explore anyway. And I think for me, that's the most exciting. If you're going to create your future, why are you limiting it to wanting to know the outcome? Surely, what you should be doing is actually really saying, let's simply explore. So when you have a disruptive learning experience, what I want you to do is almost, I call it going to the edge of your social field and then stepping further still. So the edge of your social field is your normality, your convention, what you know, what you're comfortable with. But I just want you to step beyond that, yeah? And let's see what happens. Let's see what's out there. Let's see the possibilities. Playfulness is another feature. As a company, AKD Solutions, we believe fundamentally that people learn more when they're having fun. And one of the things you will see is this, is that the purest form of learning is a child who is playing, yeah? Children are creative, they problem solve, they have no limitations, there's nothing holding them back. And if you simply observe a child playing, you will see, yeah, learning in its purest form. The problem is that when we become adults, the playfulness is knocked out of us. Playfulness is seen as childish, it's seen as immature, etc. But actually, yeah, I believe that when you utilize playfulness as a concept, yeah, the learning process is far more profound. So as an organization, pretty much 85, 90% of what we do, there is a deliberate element of playfulness in that process. And again, what happens is that you see two things happening. You see people becoming far more creative, and you're seeing the people's ability to problem solve really emerge. So I would really encourage you to use playfulness as a methodology. One of the things, if you see the work that we do what we call learning maps. Learning maps are massive board games, and we design these for organizations. And basically what we do is that we combine the playfulness with the power of conversations. And when you bring the two together, you find that you can have some profound learning experiences. One of the things I would also encourage you is this. I would encourage you to involve people outside of your norm. So what do I mean by that? Normally what happens is that when you're learning within an organization, learning happens firstly with staff and employees of the organization. And secondly, it tends to happen within the hierarchy. So for example, senior leaders train with senior leaders, middle managers train with middle managers, etc. Okay? When we learn, when we encourage this type of learning, we actually break those norms. So the type of thing that we are doing, so I'm doing a piece of work with a company called MTR Elizabeth Line. So for those who know London, the Crossrail project would be the most advanced railway network ever designed in Europe. And I'm responsible for their senior leadership training. And one of the things we're doing is that we're going to do a hackathon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a group of leaders from the organization, and then I'm going to bring a group of customers, students, environmentalists, business owners, etc., together, and we're going to create a very profound learning experience. So they're going to be working with people, talking to people, engaging with people they've never ever would have normally done so within the learning experience within an organization. And breaking those barriers will clearly and definitely give you some amazing different learning experience. And the last one that you'll see on the screen is this: disruptive learning doesn't take place online, and it definitely doesn't take place within the classroom. It takes place outside. It takes place in places which you've never thought would be your normal learning experiences and normal learning environments. So that's something which I want to really encourage you to think about as well. So hopefully those will give you those some really key features. In terms of myself, one of the things that happens, and I can appreciate, one of the first thing I need to say, disruptive learning is not for everybody. So let me just get that one out of the way now. Some people will be deeply uncomfortable with this, and it won't feel applicable. But one of the things I would argue is this. If you are a leader in an organization and you're uncomfortable with disruption, then what are you doing as a leader in that organization? Because one of the fundamentals of leadership is disruption, because we've seen it with the pandemic, and this is, we're seeing it with changes in technology. We live in a world of disruption, and as leaders, you should be able to embrace that. In fact, you should be encouraging it. Yeah, I'm not saying that you should have disruption for the sake of it, but I am saying that disruption is a key aspect and a key ingredient of leadership. And so therefore, I think that's really important. So whenever I do it, I make sure that we recognize that some clients will feel deeply uncomfortable working with us, and we're very comfortable with that fact, and they don't work with us. But the clients who do work with us, what they find is because of the profound difference in terms of how we design and we deliver learning experiences, they get greater results, they get greater connectivity, they get greater opportunities in terms of designing their future. And also, I think it means that they're far more agile, because if you are stuck in convention, and what it means fundamentally is that your head is down. And if your head is down, you're going to miss something really profound. If you look at some of the organizations globally who failed, one of the you can look at two organizations that you both know. One is Kodak. Kodak had the opportunity to take on the digital camera, but their head was down. Blockbusters, yeah, don't forget, Netflix is a very new phenomena. Blockbusters had the market, but they had their head down. They were comfortable with convention. They were not comfortable with disruption, and the rest is history, because although Kodak just about exists, Blockbusters is gone forever. And so what's really important is that if you're comfortable with convention, you're in a dangerous place, because the world will not wait for you. Yeah? What disruptive learning allows you to do is this: it allows you to create your future. So what I want to do is I just want to finish off with a couple of questions which I want you to think about in terms of your organization. So the first question is this: who is responsible for designing the future of your organization? And I think this is a really important question, because firstly, a lot of people will default to it's our leaders, and I don't disagree with that. But do your leaders actually know that they're responsible for designing the future of your organization? I would often go further than that, say, so what about all these employees? Because if you think about the amazing amount of talent and gifts and intelligence you have within your organization in terms of your staff, why wouldn't you use that brilliance? Why wouldn't you harness that brilliance in terms of designing your future? Yeah, it's not just a administrator or just a manager. They have something that could be profoundly brilliant, that could change the course of your organization. So not only who's responsible for designing the future of your organization, but how deliberate are they about creating that future? The future won't just happen. The future, if you want your best future, you have to be deliberate in terms of looking at how do we design that future. Organizations that don't, they stick to conventions, they are likely to die. you're going to see during this season now, many organizations, because they're not able to pivot, they're going to die. And so it's going to be really important. So once you've identified who's responsible for designing the future and how deliberate they are, what platforms, what learning experiences have you equipped them with? Yeah. And then the final thing was this: leaders must be disrupted and they must be disruptors. Because if your leadership is not disrupted, the world will disrupt you. So hopefully that gives you some insight into this concept. What I want to do now is just to check, do we have
there's a question that was sent on the app. I'm going to try and collect it.
Okay.
It says, what opportunities do we have to create a future fit strategy?
What opportunities? What opportunities do you have? I think, again, the first thing is this: you cannot wait. Don't wait for the opportunities to come to you. You've got to seize opportunities. You've got to, one of the things is this: this is not about doing a project plan and having long meetings. This is about sometimes just experimenting. Let's try this thing. Let's have some convention. Let's have conversations with people we've never had conversations with before. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be complex. Disruptive learning is not complicated. It's actually very simple. The problem with disruptive learning is that it's counterintuitive. And so what you've got to do is look at, how do I break the normality within this organization? How can I do that? So for example, breaking the normality could be bringing your customers in and getting them to talk to the organization in terms of what does the future look like for them. Because if you understand, one of the things I'm doing is some work with Toyota, and I'm doing some really interesting work with Toyota. And one of the things about Toyota is this: Toyota are no longer an automobile company. I'm not sure if you knew that, but they've made it very clear, we are no longer an automobile company. We are a mobility company. So they recognize that our job is not to design, make cars. Their job is to move people around. Now, that is a profound shift in the organization. But that shift couldn't have happened if they were not future looking, if they weren't engaging with customers, if they were not looking at what does the world potentially look like and how can we prepare for that future. So I think it's really important that actually you've got to really go beyond the parameters of your organization. You've got to be talking to different people, exploring in different places, because there you're going to find things. Technology is going to be a crucial game changer for all organizations. It's going to be a crucial, And the thing is this, is that if it's not been created yet, somebody's creating it. Yeah? If it hasn't been created yet, somebody's going to create it. Why shouldn't it be your organization? Are there any other questions, Erefa?
Yeah, question I was going to ask is, you say that learning is going to be done outside of the classroom, which an example you gave was bring customers up like an away, how do you call it? Because away is leaving the office, bring customers into the office as an example. But what do we do? I know you don't like to talk about post-COVID and all this COVID thing, but it's just that everyone is sort of, we're dealing with a Nigerian audience, right? So COVID has become an accelerator for us in terms of digital transformation and digital learning. And I know how we are in Nigeria, we get so excited about it that at some point now, people are going to be saying, we don't need to have people who come to our office to train us. We don't need to physically, it's even cheaper to do online learning and stuff. And I understand, completely get what you're saying in terms of disruptive learning. So as HR people, how do we begin to, convince our clients, our bosses to say, yes, there are sometimes it's good to meet online to learn, but as somebody said to me, it's that we had a session and one of the speakers said, we tend to wave when we're saying bye because we need some sort of connection because we can't read body language. So if I'm teaching you, we're trying to say, and I was in a session with you before, you were trying to describe, you're telling us to put down our thoughts and how to do a company that wants what do you call them? I don't know what to call those people now. It's gone off my head. Anyway, so they're designing something, and some of the things that you told us to write about was safety. So it's like it's not a game.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
the thoughts that came to mind is us sitting down together to come. We can be online, so we're going to be chatting here, but I also find that the connection, and because I'm comparing our sessions that we do virtually, so we do in a brick and mortar conference in Lagos, and I've been, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that virtual conferences are not good. I've been to a number, including ours, and I just think that even the disruptive learning that you're going to talk about won't work well. I agree with you, but how do we make sure that our leaders understand? Because I know in Nigeria now, all they're going to be saying is cheaper to do, just go online, do it online, it's cheaper online, you know, not really understanding that you're going to lose. So we have to have a what do you call it now? A way in between where manage it. So we can do some things online, but there's some things when you're talking innovation, you want to drive your strategy through learning. It will be almost impossible to sit down because it's tiring watching a screen for so long.
Yeah, it's really important to understand that there is about that blend is about it's not about jumping from one to the other. It's about actually how do we blend. Now the reality is this, yeah. An online experience like this will give you maybe 50-60% of the experience. If we were in a classroom together, yeah, so therefore we would get a level of learning and we could get a level of result. But if we were, all 5 of us were in a classroom together, the learning experience will be so much more profound, so much more productive. And organizations have to recognize that, especially for those who are designing the future. So if we are collectively designing the future, that is a huge responsibility. And for me, you have to invest in your future. And therefore you can't be lazy. So therefore you shouldn't be saying, oh, we use this methodology because it's convenient. You use this methodology because it's the right methodology to use. And that's what's really important, yeah? If an organization is serious about its now and its future, you should invest in it. Google, 20%, every employee spends 1 day working on their own project. What's Google doing? They're investing in their future. Who are they using? Their staff. Yeah, they're very deliberate. They're very methodical about designing their future. And we need to become like that. So as Nigerian organizations, if we have to have that elasticity in terms of our thinking and our leadership. And I think one of the challenges often, and I mean, you can shoot me down, is that we have leaders that tend to be quite static and they don't have the flexibility and the agility, yeah, to manage these situations. And again, that's a real challenge because we see the generations coming up beneath, and they have an energy, they have an elasticity, they have a totally different conventional way of thinking about things. But often when they find themselves in an organization, that's being stifled. Why do you stifle talent? One of the questions I have is this. The question is this. If you think about leadership, I say to you, leadership are responsible for optimizing the experience. So their job is to create an organization where people's experiences can be optimized, because then you optimize potential. And if you optimize potential, you then optimize performance. Does that make sense as a formula?
Yeah.
So then I ask leaders this question. What is your motivation for denying somebody their potential? Does that make sense? If you think about that, that's quite a deep question and quite a profound question, that you could find yourself guilty of denying somebody their potential. Now, if you are not deliberate about creating a space where people can be their very best now and in the future, I would say to you, I would challenge you in terms of who you are as a leader, because you are denying people their potential. And I think these are the types of questions that we need to challenge people with, in terms of actually, why are you comfortable with safe? Why are you comfortable with convention? It's because it is about me. It's an egotistic thing. It is not a community thing.
Yeah, thank you. And the static, is it static leaders that I'm worried about? Because you've now moved those static leaders into, okay, COVID has made me work from home, because I see them struggling with Zoom and stuff. Now, you want to tell them that actually we're going to go back to learning and doing things like normal. They will say, oh, but literally, I've just shifted to this. I can't go back again, But another question I have is disruptive learning. how do we, I know you said, how do we consciously, it has to be, it's a conscious effort. So how do we embed the consciousness of destructive learning into
your organization? I think the first thing to say is this: it is not something that's done every day, all of the time. It is for the right moment, for the right time, for the right reasons. Okay. For me, it's really important. The two places where I encourage disruptive learning is firstly with leaders, especially in their formative years as leaders. Yeah. Because in their formative years as leaders, you want them to understand that disruption is part of my role. And if you look at a lot of leadership training is knowledge management, transformative leadership, transactional, all of these types of things, which are quite linear, kind of linear in the way in which they're taught. So therefore, what leaders tend to think is this: if I do this and this and this and this, I get this. It's a lie. It's totally not true. Yeah, I have been leading for the last 20 years of my life. Yeah, and I can assure you, yeah, that I have never found a formula that gets me from A to B the way in which I want it to. I have learned that I must be able to be agile. I must be able to seize on opportunities, etc. That's leadership. And I think that we have taught a lot of leaders a lie, and that they walk that lie, and that lie equates to a convention. We need to teach leaders very early on disruption. And the second thing is this: I think that where an organization is saying we need to design our future, and some organization, what's interesting is this: it'd be really interesting even to see in this group here how many organizations represented here are deliberately and intentionally thinking about designing their future. That's where you've got to put this. You've got to put it. Are there any questions from anybody else in the group?
That was the only question I got on
No problem.
On YouTube. No questions. I'll say that we are safe to. Thank you very much.
No problem at all.
This afternoon, and we'll send you a copy of this recording.
Superb. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aki. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye bye.